What do you need to know about the European Commission's automotive package? How has the automotive industry reacted to further emissions flexibility in the region? And are worldwide electric vehicle sales still increasing, or has momentum slowed? This is the Automotive Update, presented by Autovista24. I'm Tom Hooker, Autovista24 journalist, here with the latest edition of the Automotive Update. I'm going to bring you up to speed with the industry's biggest news over the last 7 days. First up, the European Commission finally threw the covers off its automotive package. Now, the importance of this cannot be understated, because the proposals included within it could transform the future of both new and used car sales in the EU. So, to tell us more, I'd like to introduce Autovista24 editor Tom Gegas.
Hi Tom, good to be here.
Now, yourself alongside many others were waiting with bated breath for the European Commission's announcement. I mean, I wouldn't like to guess how many times you reloaded their press page.
Honestly, Tom, I lost count.
Well, now the announcement is finally out, could you give us a bit of background?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we go all the way back to 2023, the European Parliament and the Council adopted a regulation to ban the sale of new cars and vans which emit CO2 at the tailpipe from 2035 onwards. In the run-up to that date, new cars would also have to emit 55% less CO2 at the tailpipe compared with 2021, while new vans would need to see a 50% reduction. Now, the industry has been launching low and zero emission vehicles, and while this market has grown, there has been increasing concern about these targets as the deadline got closer. Both carmakers and EU member states have been lobbying pretty hard to get these amendments.
So it's certainly something that's been brewing for a while then. Let's just jump straight into it. Which proposal stood out to you the most if I had to get you to narrow it down to just one?
So the big headline was that instead of having that 100% reduction target for 2035, car makers will now need to cut vehicle CO2 tailpipe emissions by 90% compared with 2021 figures. Now this means that pure internal combustion engine powered models, plug-in hybrids, mild hybrids, extended range electric vehicles will all still be available from 2035 onwards. And of course you'll still be able to buy battery electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles as well.
So could you tell me what happens with that last 10%?
That is an important point, Tom. So that last 10% is going to be compensated for by the use of low carbon steel made in the EU or from the use of e-fuels and biofuels.
But of course, that's 2035. So what has the Commission proposed in the shorter term?
Well, the Commission proposed a banking and borrow scheme which could come into play for the 2030 to 2032 targets. This means manufacturers would effectively get 3 years to reduce their CO2 emissions by 55%. Additionally, the 2030 CO2 target for light commercial vehicles looks to be lowered from 50% to 40%.
This already seems like quite a large announcement, but was there anything else proposed?
Oh my goodness, yes, there were so many other announcements as part of this automotive package, and I'll try and get through them as concisely as I possibly can. Car makers are going to be able to earn super credits by selling small and affordable electric cars made in the EU. There'll also be mandatory zero and low emission vehicle share targets for corporate fleets, and these will be set at the member state level, reflecting different levels of market maturity. We will also see an update to car labelling rules. Now these provide CO2 and energy performance information to consumers. The labels will now include electric energy consumption and electric vehicle range information. Additionally, new LCVs will be included as well as used cars and used vans. Furthermore, there will be a €1.8 billion battery booster which could accelerate the development of local battery value chains. Now, of this, 1.5 billion is earmarked to support the European battery cell producers with interest-free loans. So, as a short summary, I quite like this statement from the Commissioner for Sustainable Transport and Tourism, Apostolos Tsikostas, who said that Europe's automotive industry is a cornerstone of our economy, contributing 7% to EU GDP and supporting nearly 14 million jobs. With today's automotive package, we are strengthening the sector's competitiveness, introducing flexibility in the CO2 standards for cars and vans and a technology-neutral framework. We are also creating demand for cleaner corporate cars and vans, reinforcing e-manufacturing and supply chains.
Clearly, there might be a lot of change on the horizon then. So, how has the automotive industry reacted?
We saw the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, ACEA, call the package a first step towards a more pragmatic and flexible pathway for aligning decarbonisation and competitiveness. Sigrid de Vries, the Director General of ACEA, said that today's proposals rightly recognise the need for more flexibility and technology neutrality to make the green transition a success. This constitutes a major change compared to the current law. However, she said, the devil can be very much in the detail. We will now study the package and work with co-legislators to critically strengthen the proposals where needed. The body said the package needs more decisive measures to help with the transition in the coming years. It warned that without urgent action for 2030, action on 2035 might have limited effects. Elsewhere, the European Association of Automotive Suppliers, CLEPA, called the package a positive first step towards technology neutrality. However, it said that the measures are too complex and do not do enough to address the crisis that the automotive sector is currently in. Benjamin Krieger, CLEPA's Secretary General, commented that today's package reconfirms Europe's long-term climate ambition for road transport, but with its wealth of detailed obligations, it risks creating complexity, additional cost, and falls short of setting out the path for a realistic transformation.
I can imagine the package also saw some more criticism from some figures as well.
It did. You saw green groups like Transport and Environment calling the reversal of the phase-out of ICE a confusing signal to the automotive industry and consumers. William Todds, the group's executive director, said that the EU has chosen complexity over clarity. Breeding faster horses can never have halted the ascent of the automobile. He highlighted that spending money on more polluting models means less investment for the likes of all-electric vehicles. Meanwhile, Chinese models look set to race further ahead. Meanwhile, Chris Heron, the Secretary General of eMobility Europe, echoed this point. He said that while China accelerates, Europe is hesitating, and hesitation is not a strategy. Changing the rules midway through the game undermines business confidence after companies have already committed capital and built factories around a 100% trajectory.
Thanks very much, Tom. Now, this was just a very quick rundown of the announcement. If you want to know all the details, then be sure to read through Tom's excellent article on Autovista 24. I'll put a link in the show notes. For more value-packed content that can help you make better and faster decisions in an ever-changing market, sign up for our email, which brings the latest industry trends and news straight into your inbox. It's as easy as heading to our homepage and scrolling to the sign-up form at the bottom. Check out our YouTube channel too. There, you'll find our What Is Explainer videos on essential automotive terms and topics, our launch report series, which covers everything you need to know about the latest models hitting the market, and our webinar recordings, with expert insights and exclusive data. And of course, subscribe to the Autovista 24 podcast wherever you listen to us, to get your weekly dose of automotive knowledge in just over 10 minutes or less. The latest proposals from the European Commission may affect EV adoption moving forward. But Tom, you've stuck around to discuss with me how sales are currently performing in the region and worldwide. Deliveries of EVs in Europe, which includes battery electric vehicles or BEVs and plug-in hybrids or PHEVs, have grown by 27.8% across the first 10 months of 2025, with just over 3 million units sold.
Has one of these powertrains driven EV growth in particular, Tom?
Actually, both markets are quite balanced. PHEVs have seen a bigger year-on-year sales increase of 32.1% from January to October. But it's important to remember that this is based on a smaller figure. So although BEVs recorded a smaller cumulative growth of 25.7%, they saw a higher delivery volume overall. Let's now switch to a much wider lens. Tom, you studied the global EV market this week. Is there similar EV growth going on worldwide?
There was indeed. The global electric vehicle markets grew by 28.8% year-on-year across the first 10 months of 2025.
And how is this split between BEVs and PHEVs?
Well, all-electric cars really pushed this growth. leading in terms of volumes, year-on-year growth, and share of the EV sales total. But unlike Europe, plug-in hybrids saw slower growth than battery electric vehicles. This meant they made up just over a third of all EV sales globally between January and October. A lot of this change was the result of China's slowing PHEV market. The country accounted for 71.8% of all plug-in hybrid sales in the first 10 months of this year.
That's a great point, because I know our special content editor Phil Curry recently analysed China's EV market. He found that over the first 10 months of 2025, year-on-year PHEV growth sat at 18.7%. Now, at first this sounds quite impressive. However, it was significantly below the 84.1% improvement seen across the same period in 2024. This is a stark contrast with BEV's cumulative growth of 37.2% from January to October. So then, similar to the global market, overall EV sales in China were up by 29.1% across the first 10 months of 2025, with BEVs driving this growth. Would you like to find out which models led the global, European and Chinese BEV and PHEV markets? Head to the show notes for the links to our articles where we publish the top 10 leaders of each region. A big thanks goes to Autovista 24's editor Tom Gegas for appearing in this episode, and Autovista 24 web editor James Roberts for co-producing. Additional thanks go to Autovista 24 special content editor Phil Curry. The music was Better Find a Solution Fast by Richard Ames. The Automotive Update will be taking a short break over the festive period, but don't worry, we'll be returning in the new year. For now though, thanks very much for listening to the Autovista 24 podcast.